All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at questions 16 and 17 together since they are the same directions, and they are to write the equation in standard form of the line through the given points. All right, so this is a little twist on the previous few questions where we were given a point and we were given a slope, and we took that information and plugged it into the point-slope formula. And we're going to be doing that here with 16 and 17, except before we can plug anything into the point-slope formula, we have to find a slope. And so we're kind of combining everything that we've been working on up until this point here on the practice test. So the beginning of the practice test, we were finding the slope between 2 points, and then we were working on taking the slope and just 1 point and plugging it into the point-slope formula and getting an equation. But now we have to kind of do all of that. So first thing we have to do is take these 2 points, find the slope. And you'll recall that to find the slope, we're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then once we do that, we're going to use the point-slope formula. So let's go ahead and write out everything that we need. And the point-slope form, y minus y1 equals m times quantity x minus x1. And then they also want standard form. So let's go ahead and just write that out. So standard form, we have now ax plus by equals c. All right, so we're going to be using all 3 of these forms here. And you'll recall that the first thing we did when we are given 2 points and we want to find the slope, we label. So x1, y1, x2, y2. And let's go ahead and take this information now and plug it directly into this slope formula. So y2 minus y1, well, that's going to be 3 minus, now negative 8, over x2 minus x1, so negative 4 minus 3. And this is going to go ahead and give us 3. When we distribute this negative through, we're going to get 3 plus 8 over negative 4 minus 3. And so 3 plus 8 is going to give us 11 over negative 4 minus 3 is going to be negative 7. And so we're going to have negative 11 over 7 as our slope. So this is our m. And now that we have a slope, we can go ahead and choose one of these 2 points to plug into our point-slope form, right? Because we need an m and we need a single point to be able to use this point-slope formula. And so now that we have our m, you can choose either one of these 2 points. It doesn't matter, you'll still get the same answer. And we're going to take the information, plug it into the point-slope form, and then write our equation in standard form. So I'll go ahead and choose the second point that we're given here. All right, and so we're going to have now y minus. Now, even though we initially labeled this point as x2, y2, this labeling was only for finding the slope. So really, we can go ahead and get rid of that labeling because it's no longer relevant. Once we've found the slope, then that labeling goes away, and we can relabel this point x1, y1 if that helps you for using the point-slope form. So y minus y1, well, what's y1? Well, y1 is now 3 equals our m, our slope, so negative 11 over 7 times the quantity x minus x1. So we have x, that's an x, minus, what's our x1? Negative 4. And so let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We have y minus 3 equals negative 11 over 7. And when we distribute this negative through, we really get x plus 4. All right, so here we are. You'll recall again that once you're at this stage of your point-slope formula, you can either go ahead and distribute this fraction through and go ahead and work with your fractions, or what I prefer to do is I like to clear that fraction by multiplying the entire equation by the common denominator, which in this case is going to be 7. And when we say multiply the whole equation by the common denominator, really we're multiplying in 3 specific places. We're going to be multiplying our y by 7, that negative 3 by 7, and then this is a single term on the right-hand side, so we're multiplying this term by 7. All right, so when we do that, we get 7 times y, which is going to give us 7y. Negative 3 times 7 is going to give us a negative 21. And the whole reason for clearing this fraction is so that we can cancel out these 7s, which is going to leave us with negative 11, and then times our x plus 4. All right, so let's go ahead. We're almost done here. Let's go ahead and let's distribute this negative 11 through. So we're going to have 7y minus 21 equals negative 11x, right? Because negative 11 times x is negative 11x. And negative 11 times positive 4 is going to give us negative 44. And if we want this equation in standard form, again, we want our x and our y on one side and the constant on the other. So let's go ahead and add 11x to both sides. And so that'll give us 11x plus 7y minus 21 equals now negative 44. All right, now we want to go ahead and get this constant on one side. Right now we have constants on two sides. So let's go ahead and add 21 to both sides. And when we do that, finally, we're going to have 11x plus 7y equals, well, negative 44 plus 21 is going to give us a negative 23. And so now we've successfully written this equation in standard form of the line through the given point. So first things first, when you're given 2 points and asked for the equation, you want to find the slope between these 2 points. And once you have your slope, you can choose either one of the 2 points and take that single point that you choose along with the slope you found, plug that into the point slope form, and then just work through it like we've been doing the last few problems, and put your equation into either standard form or slope intercept form, depending on what it is they're asking. All right, I said we were going to take a look at 17 here as well, so let's go ahead and do that. So again, write the equation in standard form of the line through the given points. So we're going to go ahead and x1, y1, label, x2, y2. And we want to plug this information into our slope form. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so y2 is 5. So 5 minus y1, which is negative 8, over x2 minus x1. So 0 minus, now negative 2. Well, when we distribute these negatives through, we're going to end up with 5 plus 8 over 0 plus 2. And so now we have 5 plus 8 gives us 13, 0 plus 2 is 2, and so our slope is 13 over 2. Now that we've found our slope, we're going to choose one of the 2 given points and use that point plus the slope we just found and plug into the point slope formula. I always recommend, if you are given a point that has a 0 in it, go ahead and use that point with a 0, because it makes it a lot easier to work with, and you'll see why hopefully in a minute here. So again, point slope form, so y, I'll go ahead and write it over here. So point slope form, hopefully you guys will have memorized this by now. We've seen it a whole bunch of times. So y minus y1 equals m times quantity x minus x1. And so we have y minus, well, what's y1? You'll recall that, again, now that we found our slope, this labeling can go away and we can relabel these points if we want to. And I said we were going to work with this point because it has a 0, so this becomes x1 and y1. So our y1 is 5 equals m, which is 13 over 2, times x minus 0. All right, well, we can do one of 2 things. We can either right away, we can go ahead and distribute this slope through, or again, we can clear our fraction. And why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's go ahead and clear our fraction. We're going to multiply the entire equation by our common denominator. So multiply by 2, by 2, by 2. And hopefully, since over these last few examples, you've noticed that when we clear our fraction, we multiply by the common denominator in the same 3 places every time. Your y, your constant on the left, and then, of course, this is one single term here on the right, and so we multiply simply this term by the common denominator. And doing that, that leaves us 2 times y gives us 2y. Negative 5 times 2 is now negative 10. These 2's cancel out, so we're left with simply a 13. And when we distribute this 13 through, we get 13 times x, which is now 13x, and 13 times negative 0, or just 0, becomes 0, so we don't have to worry about that. And so now if we want to rewrite this equation in standard form, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our x and y are on one side, and our constant is on the other. So let's go ahead and subtract 13x, subtract 13x, and that's going to go ahead and leave us with negative 13x plus 2y minus 10 equals 0. Be careful here, because you notice when I moved this x term over, I cleared the right-hand side of my equation. So don't lose your equal sign or lose that right side of the equation. Make sure that because we moved everything over and we didn't have anything left on the right, we have to make sure that we replace that with a 0 so that we don't lose the left and right-hand side. And now let's go ahead, and since we want the constant on the other side, we're going to go ahead and add 10 to both sides. And so that's going to give us negative 13x plus 2y equals 10. And now you might be tempted to say, okay, I'm finished because I have my x and my y on one side and my constant on the other. And while that's correct, you do have that, you want to be careful, because you may recall in class we talked about when your equation is in standard form, this leading coefficient of x cannot be negative and it cannot be a fraction. And right now we have a negative leading coefficient. So how do we change that? Well, we can multiply this whole equation by negative 1. And by doing that, it simply changes the sign of everything here in my equation. So it doesn't really change the numbers, just the sign. So if it was negative, it's now positive. If it was positive, it's now negative. So we're going to have now 13x, positive 2y becomes now minus 2y, and a positive 10 now becomes a negative 10. And now we've successfully written this equation in standard form of the line that goes through these 2 points, negative 2 comma negative 8 and 0 comma 5.